All right, so here we are on YouTube, guys. I'm just gonna. Okay, just let me know that you guys can hear me on YouTube. All right, good, good. All right, so I want to quickly look through some of the submissions for the walk cycle. A lot of good stuff, but a lot of things that we still need to address as we kind of move towards our more finalized animation. So this is kind of really our first crack at like character animation. Um, we had mixed results. So some of you guys did a pretty solid job. Some of you had maybe struggled with it a little bit more. But let's talk through what worked and what didn't work. Hang on. All right, so basically here we designed our character, right? Then we did some planning. Okay, so we did some referencing. If you remember, the one thing I missed here, and I apologize that I did not include, is a reference video. So ideally, we want to have like some reference that we can kind of draw from in order to kind of produce this sequence. Okay, so here we have the result. Okay, so we basically took this. I can't remember. I think we went more so with this one. Which was a little bit more it captured more of the attitude, the mood of the character that we had outlined, but I kind of dialed it back a little bit to make it on model, make it make sense a little bit better. And then I went and I mapped out my first 4 drawings, being the stride position, the crossover position, the catch position, which happens immediately after the crossover, and then the liftoff, which happens immediately after. Sorry, the catch, which happens immediately after the stride, and then the liftoff, which happens immediately after the crossover. So I started with that, and then I went in and I added some more drawings to flesh it out further. And let's just bring that up. Yeah, Ricardo, that's the plan. All right, so file. I just got a new version of this program, TV Paint, so everything's bigger. You guys should be able to see a little bit more clearly what's going on. Some of this stuff you don't need to see. File open. There we go. No, that's not it. Okay, let's actually open here. Okay. All right, so so I wound up with this, and you can see I went in and I did add the extra in-betweens. So we started with 4 drawings total. Let me see if I can just highlight these. So this was my stride position. This is my catch position. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because we are going to very soon have to start adding in-betweens. Some of you are, but a lot of you are not. So a lot of you are just doing like the first 4 drawings, maybe a slightly more in-betweens than that. But ultimately that is not going to cut it when we go to do our final sequences. So we're going to need to make sure that we have a little bit more of an elaborate setup. So we start with this, right? Our stride, our catch, our crossover, and then our lift off, right? And then we can kind of basically repeat. But then what I did is I do the direct in-between between those two, right? So between my stride and my catch, I did an in-between, which ended up being this. And then between this and my stride, I did another in-between, and between that last drawing and my catch, I also did another in-between. So we end up having 3 in-betweens in between each of those first 4 key drawings, okay? So this is ultimately what we need to start doing to start fleshing this thing out further. Another thing that we'll need to keep in mind is ultimately this would only represent half of my total animation sequence. So if, for example, let me just indicate here with red. Let's say the right leg here is red and that's forward. Let's do this on a new layer so I don't wreck this. Okay, so this right leg is forward. We step, and it's like that. And you know what? We should do not only the leg, but also the arm. Okay, so we have that kind of relationship. So this is basically whatever is in front. These are the near side legs and arm. Okay, and you'll see this will help us track the movement a lot more easily. Okay, and I had to give myself little arrows because as the arms start to cross over, it does get hard to tell which one's which. This is pretty much a wash. I could choose either, probably. But then this one is continuing forward. Okay, so you'll notice I have, more than 4 drawings here, right? So I think that's hopefully the key takeaway is that 4 drawings is not going to be enough for most actions, unless you're going for something very, very stylized. So let's watch this back. So this is basically represents one leg taking a stride, just that right leg taking a stride. But then now we'd have to basically repeat this. So we'd have to take all of this now. It's like this. Control C, I'll just copy that, paste it, right? And then I'll basically have to continue on. Okay, with this right leg now stepping forward again. Okay, so I'll just continue on here. So we only did, at least the way I did it, and a lot of you, from what I saw, you did half the walk cycle, not the whole thing. So we'd have to basically, we can use that one stride as a basis, but then we'd have to kind of extrapolate further, okay, for our final sequence, so that we make sure that we have the entire walk properly represented. And some of you did do this, so I commend you guys, whoever did put in that extra work. And I want you guys to potentially be able to use whatever work you've done here for your, as a foundation for your character animation that you can potentially use in your games. Okay, but you have to make sure that it's something that you'll be happy with in the longer run. Okay, so it's not something, you don't want to mail this in. You do want to try to put in a good effort. Okay, so as the leg goes forward, okay, so this is the, say the character's right leg, their right arm goes back. Okay, so their right arm will be back when the right leg is forward, and vice versa. The right arm will be forward when the right leg is back. And then the same for the left side. Okay. All right. So now, if I play it back, you'll see how we can track the movement of each of those arms and each of those legs, and we have the full cycle. So it's nice and fluid. We do now have 32 drawings total. Okay. So is it 32? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So 32 drawings total. So it's not an insignificant number of drawings. It's quite a lot. It does take time, and I haven't cleaned it up yet, so it will still require cleanup. So it is a kind of labor-intensive process. It does take a little bit of time, but it is worth it. And the cool thing, animation for games in particular, and I've mentioned this before, you get a lot of mileage over those, out of those 32 drawings. If you think about it, you know, you might see this animation if the game is 10 hours long, you know, and you have a nice kind of like nicely made walk cycle. You might see that walk cycle for, I don't know, 6 hours out of your 10 hours of gameplay. In which case, that's like, you know, for 32 drawings, you know, and it gets 6 hours of kind of use out of it. I don't mind the 32 drawings, even no matter how hard I have to work on them. Like if it takes me, you know, a few days to do those, it's worth it, right? And that's why you look at games like Cuphead, right? Cuphead, they painstakingly made each of those animations, but they get so much mileage out of them, and it makes it so worth it in the end. So it's something to think about, and something to be aware of. So last week we did not do the entire walk cycle. All we did was half, right? We did just one stride. Okay, so just the left or the right leg here stepping back. We also have to kind of hook it up and make it step forward again. So whatever leg was planted has to then also go up in the air, okay? And then come forward again. So that's going to be our overall cycle. All right, guys? So just keep that in mind. Sorry about that. And beyond that, this is kind of just the kind of base building block. We would want to use this as a rough. For example, we still have to go in and tie this down further. If we have a character, so say you have a character design, you would then need to kind of come in and put that character design on top. I always draw the same character. Let's see if we can't draw something different. Okay, so right arm forward here. So this is where we would kind of go in and kind of speak to the detail of what our character ought to look like. Okay, and see how we use these anchor points that we established, and that's how we kind of build out our leg around that structure. Okay, but that gives us a really good solid kind of sense of where things ought to start and end. Okay, if we know that we need to have this form, okay, wrapping around these stick bones that we've created. Okay, so these would be back arm, back leg, etc. All right, guys. So that's where we're going. Okay, we are going. It's going to be a big final push. This last assignment is a pretty substantial one. We'll get into the details of it shortly, but I'll expect to see 3 animations total, which is going to be a walk, an idle, and a jump or attack or something equivalent. Okay, so we're going to need all of those, but again, we'll want to kind of go in with this this movement, okay, the skeleton of our movement kind of worked out, and then go in after the fact and just use our actual in-game character design or whatever final character design we want to work with, and just dress that on top of the that rough animation that we've created. Okay, so again, we're working on this in stages, we're working in passes. We're not focusing on details at the outset, we're just focusing on like simplified movement, and then going into the more fleshed out animations later. Okay, all right, so now, any questions about this before I continue? Okay, and so just to kind of quickly speak to what this might look like, I'll then, have to go in with this and continue to flesh out the design here. Okay, but again, I am doing this in several passes, and I only do that for the sake of quality, in the longer run, and so that I don't get lost in the details. Okay, I have a nice kind of foundational way of keeping track of what's happening underneath. Okay, because I have this stick figure to basically work off of. And the nice thing about this is I could make any character on top of this, right? I've animated the skeleton, and now I'm just kind of getting the character to align with that. and here the arm in this case probably be coming forward a little bit. And then of course you have to figure out what to do with the head. What's that all going to look like? Okay. So plan, reference. Make sure you have your character design worked out. You know what your character's supposed to look like, and that will also help you. Okay. Okay, so again, just like we did before, we'd want to work out our key drawings first. Okay, so I'd start with those first 4 drawings. This, right? Whereas these 4, and I basically have to kind of reverse them for the next 4, okay, for the second stride. But basically, that is where I'd start, and I'd make sure I speak to my actual design here. Okay, make sure that that works, and that would kind of constitute my final draft. Okay, then I'd have to go in and clean that up. All right. Yes, you can do pixel art. Pixel art, in truth, will likely be a lot more manageable. Okay, just because it's already clean, you don't have to like do the line art and then kind of color it. It's just kind of like it all kind of works together. Yes, of course you can do pixel art for sure, by all means. All right, so I'm gonna stop with this. Hopefully this makes sense, guys. I'd love to go through the entire process with you, but we won't have time to cover new material, so I will leave this as it is. Close this, close this. All right, and so let's look at some of the submissions, okay? I'll go through a few. If anyone wants me to look at theirs, just let me know. But, so we'll watch this one. So not bad. Let me set this to loop. So I think this is pretty solid. Main thing, and I'm going to say this a lot, is it lacks in-betweens. I feel like for me that's the main issue. I feel like maybe we have, I don't know, maybe 8 drawings here. I think there's more than 4, but it's not quite fluid enough. You'll want to make sure that you have a few more frames there to get the animation more lifelike. Right now it kind of sits in this, it's almost alive, but it's not quite there. And then some of the stuff's popping around, so just keep an eye and track like the origins of things. So keep track of like where does that shoulder point originate, okay, and just make sure that it can kind of move forward and back on the body, so you can have that happening, but it shouldn't pop, right? It shouldn't like jitter around. It should be a fluid, nice arc also. Of course, that arc will be also dependent on what's happening with the whole body. If the whole body is moving up and down, of course, you'll have more of a circle motion, you know, on the shoulders. And that's why I say reference is key. And this is another thing that I wanted to point out, is that a lot of you posted reference, but I don't think any of you posted video reference, like actual video of somebody walking. And that's a failure on my part to communicate that properly. That's what I was expecting. Generally speaking, for animation, anytime I say reference, 9 times out of 10 I mean video reference, and 9 times out of 10 times of that I mean video reference that you've shot yourself. Okay, so basically you decide what you want your character to do. Okay, you act it out. You get up, you walk around, you look at it, say this one works, this one doesn't work, let me try it again. If you're acting it out, or if you're walking the way you want your character to walk or move, that is the key. Then you have that, you can build that into your animation. But if you're just kind of going off of animation videos that other people have done, you are then making a derivative work of their idea, okay? And they've potentially shot their own reference. So their idea is getting degraded and diluted, and it's going to be whatever you end up with. So you want to kind of generate your own source material so that you can keep track of things like, what are my shoulders doing? You know, what are my knees doing? What are my feet doing? What are my hips doing? You know, what is my head doing? What is my face doing? Am I looking side to side to side? What does that look like? You can go as exaggerated or as subtle as you like, okay, if you shoot your own reference videos. So that is, sometimes that's half the battle. If you have good source material as a reference and you get good quality thumbnails from that, you are really, really setting yourself up to do a good job, okay? So I would suggest, yes, Joshua, record yourselves walking. I think actually one person did. I think one person, you had one of those treadmills and you were walking on the treadmill. So if you have a treadmill, or if you take your camera outside, if you have a selfie stick or something, you can hold your camera out to the side. Or if you have a drone or whatever, and you know you want to kind of walk in the drone, follow the tracks with you. Or if you can't do that and you just set the phone down somewhere and you just walk, you also do that. Maybe you have a family member who will go to the park with you and they can walk alongside you, filming you as you walk back and forth and do your jumps or rolls or flips or whatever it is you want to do, right? But have fun with it, exaggerate, so that you have really good quality source material to pull from in order to kind of get things going. All right. So yeah, so again, good references. I mean, at least if you have a video of something, it's something, but it's better almost always to generate your own source material. So this one, it's just too limited. It's just too limited. Not much is going on. It's simple, which kind of works, but I think we need a little bit more of an up and down. Notice how this character is really moving up and down. There's getting a lot of overlapping action on their head and their hair. So you have an opportunity here with the I guess it's a mushroom or something. You have an opportunity to kind of get that to bop around a little bit, go up and down, and all that. So Joshua, you don't have a cell phone. So you have a cell phone camera or even a laptop. Just walk in front of your laptop camera. I'm sure you guys can figure out a way to record this video. You don't have to. If you're really uncomfortable, sharing a video of yourself doing reference, I totally understand. But it's a good thing to not think too hard about, right? And to for the sake of your animation piece, even if you shoot the reference but never show it to me, but you show me some other YouTube reference just to get the mark, I mean, that's okay, right? But better to just not worry too much about it. But as long as you have that reference, for your own personal use, for the sake of your animation, that will be super valuable. Okay, so that's what I expect for you guys going forward. All right, so this one. And we're kind of running into the same problem that I had, where we're losing track a little bit of which arm is which leg is which. I think more careful planning needs to be done for this, and I can't fully see it, but it seems like the feet are tracking backwards at slightly uneven rates. So if you remember, we wanted to have that chart on the ground where we plotted each of the heel impressions so that our feet tracked backwards at an even rate. Okay, so the spacing in between each heel was consistent. And then beyond that, we want to get the body moving up in a more motivated way. And the reference that I supplied, guys, we had a belt on our character. We had the underwear kind of structure, and we drew through. We always want to draw through an animation so we know where the front leg is, where the back leg is, and where things originate from. Okay, so I think the main thing for me here is this needs further refinement. So this could work as, like, say, your thumbnails that you've kind of tested out, but it doesn't work as like a proper animation because it's jumping around too much. Okay. And okay, so here's Isaac. Yeah, you have the reference video, so this is great. The only problem with stuff like this, I like that you got the attitude in there. Like you got the arms drooping, you're not getting much movement. You got the head leaning over, and that could be just because you don't want to fall off or something. I don't know. But those are things that you want to integrate into your animation. So actually, I didn't see that come through. I would expect to see a more kind of like low energy walk, like the head drooping down, maybe sad. Something more closely reflecting the reference video. Okay, and that's the whole key. Like we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just shoot the reference, use the reference. Okay, as closely as possible. We of course want to exaggerate things. We want to push things, right, and caricature real life. But good caricature has to be rooted in a strong resemblance to some real motion or likeness, right? So we need to make sure that we're using our reference effectively. All right, so this one's not bad, but again, this one needs more in-betweens. This one, I would guess maybe 8 drawings again, if that. Maybe not even, maybe it's just the 4. Yeah, so this is just like, you're just starting, right? You just need more drawings because it's not fluid enough yet. Okay, so that's the main issue here. Other than that, I think the keys are working. They're solid. I would also suggest drawing through because when you do need to trace back and do the other side, you're not going to know where that far arm is. Okay, so you want to make sure that you track it. If you want to do what I did and kind of use different colors for right, left, that will help you kind of keep track of what's going on here. Okay, so when you do need to flop it over, you can kind of just reverse the colors there to get it to work effectively. All right, so this one also works, but again, need more in-betweens. That's kind of the main thing I would say. Probably try to get a little bit more squash stretch going on the head or overlapping action. It's up to you, but it's a good start, but you need more in-betweens. I think that's the main thing I would definitely say. But you got the movement of the feet kind of tracking backwards. It looks okay. This one's almost okay, but again, I think you maybe took your thumbnails and maybe you clean them up. I don't know, or maybe you just use them as they were, without kind of double checking to make sure that you refine things. I suggest looking at our video from last week. I brought my thumbnails in. I used that as a starting point, but then I did a second iteration beyond that. Okay, where I made sure that the actual animation worked. That's the one thing that you guys will want to make sure that you're doing. Otherwise, it'll kind of work, but some things won't animate correctly, right? So it looks like the character's freezing while his arms are moving. The feet are, you know what it is? I think you just need to get rid of either the repeat drawing. I think you have both the stride and the repeat, and then when it loops, you're getting a double hit on this animation. So just drop one of those so that you go from this to this to this to this and then back to this, okay? Or this to this to this to this and then back to this, okay? So you just don't want to double up on a pose that is too similar, okay? Otherwise it'll look like the animation is not looping properly. So I think that's the main thing I'm picking up on here. Okay, this is interesting. It's a little hard to evaluate. The main thing I would say to you, and this is a big thing, make sure that your character animates in place, okay? And that goes for everybody. Don't make your character walk across the screen. It'll be impossible to get that to work in your engine. So make sure that your animation is animated in place with the feet sliding backwards, okay? Otherwise, trying to get this to work programmatically will be super difficult. All right, so just be sure of that. And actually, I would say the same for jump cycles. It's going to be tricky, but ideally, if you can do it, make the jump kind of stay in place, okay? And then kind of land as best as possible. All right, and this one's also interesting. It kind of works. for the most part, it works. I think we're just getting lost in which arm is which. I think you're getting some scale issues where this upper arm looks to shrink. Looks like it's shrinking. Okay, and your up down is kind of working, but I think it could overall be more fluid. Other than that, I like it. I like the head turn. I like the direction it's going. It just needs some tightening up, some cleanup. But it's cool. I like this one. I think those seaweed arms could use a little bit of work, and there's a part of the animation that does pop. Okay, so just try to identify where it's popping, and get that to read a little bit more fluidly. And those arms design choices, you might want them to get a little bit longer, but I think other than that, like, not too bad. Feet are working really, really nicely. Get a really strong sense of 3D movement here. See that hip kind of tracking forward and back for each step. I think that you've done a really, really nice job on that. I would suggest putting a belt line as well, and maybe a center line as well to further drive that home. And ideally maybe a corresponding rotation on the shoulders as well. So when the hip rotates back, the shoulder rotates slightly forwards, and vice versa. The shoulder of the same side, I should say. Alright, and this one, yeah, this one's just like 2 drawings, I feel like, so not quite enough there to do anything with. And be careful that you're just using the outside, the silhouette. Try to avoid that. Work from the inside out. Identify where the legs originate from. Again, just revisit the video we looked at the way we did things last week, and that will kind of inform the choices that you're making. Okay, so this one is it's not quite working. You're getting too drastic of a change and happening over too quick a time period for this to work, and you don't even have the far arm, the rear arm. We want to at least see that. So yeah, so it's not quite where it needs to be. All right. So this is the one where it looks like you went in, you did all your in-betweens, you did the left leg and the right leg. It's pretty solid. I think the main thing the issue that I would have for this, or the main thing I'd point out, is try to identify with like a stick figure, where does that hip start, where's the knee, where's the ankle, etc., so that you're not getting things like, see how this thigh shrinks quite a lot, right? It's not too bad. Like, it could be smoothed out some more, but you're on the right track for sure. I think it's and I wouldn't even say volume is like a major glaring issue, but it kind of is, in the sense that that leg is kind of shrinking and elongating. Okay, but for the most part, I think you're onto something. I think you're on the right track. Okay, and just here's an example of, like, again, good to get reference, but please get live action reference. Shoot yourself so that you have a good sense of, what is going on. What are the hips doing? What are the knees doing? What are the feet doing? What's the timing like? How do the arms swing? Look for, like, where the shoulders move. At what point does the foot come off the ground? At what point does it come back down? Shooting live action reference will be so informative, okay, because you're not going to be guessing anymore. You'll really have an understanding of how the movement works, okay, and any overlapping action on the head and neck, it'll all be more clear if you do that. Okay, and then so here it looks like, again, it looks like you've plotted out here, but for whatever reason here they're not tracking accurately. Or it might be that you're not bringing the foot up high enough off the ground. Okay, so that crossover position, this foot needs to be higher up off the ground. Okay, so it looks like right now it's touching. So it almost looks like the feet are kind of like just sliding forwards and back as opposed to stepping, right? It's kind of like that. Okay, this one's not too bad. Again, could benefit from some more in-betweens. and maybe a little bit more up down, not quite enough of a catch position, so we don't get a lot of weight. The weight comes from the sense of the body walking, and it takes a step and it has to kind of catch the weight. Ooh, it's just one leg, and a lot of momentum coming here. I gotta kind of really kind of muscle up to catch the body here, right? So that's a little bit lost there, but other than that, like solid breakdown, good stuff. Not too bad. Again, just watch some volume. Look at that back leg really kicks out quite substantially. You have the up down, the nice little bit of a bounce to the overall sequence, but it feels uneven, and you have like a lot of like volume issues going on. So leg elongating then shrinking, and all kinds of stuff. I think this is referencing Richard Williams, which is fine, but maybe a little bit too closely referencing it. And for this kind of stuff, we more so just want to get an understanding of, we do have a stride, we do have a catch, we have a crossover, we have a lift off, we have a going into our reverse stride. And we'll want to make sure that, again, just shoot live action reference. Okay, so get a proper walk, an actual walk. It's going to have a little more personality, a little bit more nuance to it, and then you can kind of pull from that. All right, a little more up down, I think, for this. I like that you've got a little bit of overlapping action, like a little bit of forward back on the head. And the arms are maybe a little too stiff. They're like kind of just like pivoting from the shoulder, and they're robotic in terms of their movement. There's no real kind of cushioning at the front and back. There are no slow in, slow outs. So that's kind of the main issue with that. And then I think we could have a little bit more of a exaggerated up and down on the pose as well. Okay. So again, not bad. I think for the most part, a lot of these are going to be the same issue. It's just not enough drawings, and the drawings sometimes that are there are not worked out quite well enough. So the animation is a little bit herky-jerky. Okay, so if you're only having like 4 drawings, I do expect that you've nailed those 4 drawings. Okay, so if you were to go to do in-betweens based on those first 4 drawings, it would work. Okay, but if you have 4 drawings, 8 drawings, and you have a lot of popping movement, it tells me that you still need another pass or 2 just to lock down what that movement ought to be. Okay. This one, I commend your ambition, but I think it is too much. It's too much detail to manage. I would rather, versus going into all this extra detail, that you just capture the core movement, the core forms, and get that walk to move nicely. So get the foot to plant, catch, track back across the ground while the other one is lifting off and kind of crossing forward, and repeat. Okay, so I commend the ambition. Is this grease pencil, or is this like Krita with some transformations? It looks like grease pencil, which is fine. You can continue to use that. It's totally fine, but just make sure that you are not getting lost in the detail. And I think if you're going to do that, just work out your kind of a detail-less version first, and then kind of do another pass with the details after the fact. Okay. Okay, but I do like the pose and the idea, the attitude that you're aiming at. But it's just a matter of trying to animate with all this detail right away is really, really tricky. Okay, so you'll want to make sure that you've nailed the actual normal sequence first. Okay, so just get the stick figure version working. Okay, and then start layering on the detail after the fact. Okay, again, not bad, just popping around too much. It's almost like you maybe made your thumbs, but you did not do the subsequent step of like refining from there. Okay, not bad here. Same thing, just need more drawings. Watch your scale. So it looks like things are kind of getting a little long and short, so the arms getting longer and shorter. leg looks like it's getting longer and shorter. So just be mindful of those kinds of things. Figure out where things start and end. Kind of put the dots, okay, to indicate the origin. Put a dot to indicate the knee, heel, etc. Okay. Cool. This one's not bad. I think a little bit more up down. So a little bit more up down. Take that center hip cog and just have that go up and down with the character. A lot of potential here, but it's just not quite there yet. I think it just needs a little bit more weight to it. And it feels slightly uneven, like the timing on one step takes longer than the other step. So it's like this near leg takes longer to go back than the far leg. So just even out the timing to make sure that it is it's consistent. And it might be that you just only have half the animation. Yeah, you only have half the animation so far. So you want to kind of reverse what's happening with the legs and the arms to get the full loop going. Okay, and then of course adding in-betweens as well. And make sure, I'm looking at it here, see how the hip here never goes up and down. Okay, so you have this line. So in our stride, it could be here. Catch, it should be slightly lower. That knee leg should be more bent, like that. Then here we're lifting up again. As that leg straightens, it's going to drive the hips upwards. Okay, and then we're going to kind of come back to the height. Oh, no, you're missing the lift off as well. So after this is the lift off position where it's going to be the highest, where the foot is here. You're slightly on a tippy toe. This leg is not quite down yet. Okay, so just reference the look at the Animator Survival Kit images that I posted, and just kind of familiarize yourself with those first 4 drawings: the contact / stride, the catch, the crossover, and then the lift off. Okay, and those are the first 4 drawings you want to nail down. Not bad. I like this. Could be a little more fluid, but I like what's going on with the head. I think you snap back to the profile too soon. We should maybe have one more you have this pose where he's looking slightly 3/4. So have one where you split the difference between profile and 3/4 right in between those two, and then we'll get a nice kind of rotation like this on the head. Nice up down. More in-betweens as well for you. You don't have quite enough in-betweens, but what you have there is pretty solid. Here, interesting, but not a lot of up-down going, not enough drawings, so it's just a little too simple at this stage. Okay, and this one's more ambitious. It's kind of like a 3/4. Hands in pockets. Let's loop this. So not bad. I think the thing that I respond to, and maybe you do subconsciously, I don't know, is the lack of up down in a walk seems highly unnatural. It almost seems like they're on like in those special effects films, like the old ones from the 60s where they have a harness and they kind of walk in midair. It kind of looks like that. They're just kind of like suspended, and they're just kind of pretending like they're walking. You know what I mean? Versus actually kind of pushing their weight up against the force of gravity, and then falling. Because remember, a walk is a controlled fall. We lean forward on one leg, right, and our body kind of starts falling down towards the ground and forwards, and then we swing our other leg out to catch it. Okay, but in the process of that catch, that leg needs to compress, to hold the weight of the body, and as a result, the hips go down, and then they gradually get pushed back up as we go into the next controlled fall. So yeah, any lack of up down is going to seem very conspicuous. Okay. You have a little more of an up down here, but even then, need more in betweens. Get the stationary one to work first and foremost. Okay. So what I get from this, when we focus too much on the contours, the silhouette, the outside, we lose a track of like the fundamentals of what's happening, okay, which is like we have a bone here, okay, which is we can represent with a line, with a dot and a dot, right? And then we have another bone and we have another bone. These never change length. They always basically stay the same length. And when it's straightened out, it'll push the hips up. And when it's bent, the hips will come down, right? So think of it in those simple terms. Don't get lost in the details. Focus on just the movement. You can do that with a stick figure, and if it works with a stick figure, you can happily add on the muscles and rest of the forms and structures after the fact. Okay, this one's just a little too simple. So it's like, I think just a couple of drawings. So definitely needs up and down. We need a little bit more going with this. And again, automatically, if we have the legs kind of going forwards and back, but we don't have any up and down, we're going to get strange compression on the legs, and they'll get the volume will change in unnatural ways. So we definitely need to make sure that we have a nice up down. So this one's not too bad. Just watch maybe a little bit too much back forward back, but for the most part it's not too bad. Watch also the fluidity of the feet. Sometimes they look like they're sticking in position, as opposed to kind of tracking back, right? So we want to make sure that the foot kind of steps, tracks back, steps, tracks back, like that. Okay, not bad. Simplified. I think maybe more frames would be great. Okay, to get this more fluid. But other than that, like, I think it definitely works. More of a run cycle than a walk. The way you can tell the difference is a run will at times have both legs, both feet off the ground. A walk will always have at least one foot on the ground at the same there will always be at least one foot in contact with the ground in a walk. Okay, this is not bad. Again, getting a little lost in the exterior, not focusing enough on the interior forms and structures and what's happening. Similar, kind of just, do you need another kind of iteration after thumbnails, okay? So I do want you to continue doing thumbnails, guys, but just make sure that you do another iteration. So this is a good reference. This is a great reference, actually, for a walk. You will want to choose a section of it to work with. And you'll want to kind of look at what's happening. It's a little hard to tell, but look at what's happening with the shoulders. Swing forward. You can see its origin is kind of moving. The head is kind of moving a little bit too. Arms are straight, but then the elbow bends, swings forward. There's a bit of a slow in and slow out of this position, right? And we see a bit of the up down that's happening there as well. Okay, so good reference. This doesn't quite do it justice. Just because things like the legs are kind of getting longer or shorter. See, if the ground were to be here, see how those legs kind of lift off the ground and then kind of come back down. So just be mindful of their volumes. And I know it's probably not intentional, but it kind of looks like, just based on the amount of drawings and where everything's placed, it looks like these arms are just rotating, swinging around the body, as though the body is just pivoting on a vertical axis. So just be mindful of things like that. It probably works the other way, but what things look like based on the drawings that you've chosen. You do have to be careful about that kind of stuff. Nice simple example here. I think it could be a little bit more fluid, so maybe a few more drawings to flesh things out, and maybe a little bit more overlapping action through the head and ears potentially, just to liven things up. Okay, because it maybe reads a little stiff, but good job getting the up downs. I think a little bit of overlapping action on the head and just like a few more in betweens would really kind of bring this thing to life. One other small thing to be careful of is the thickness of the leg. So in the front it's thin, And then the back, it's a little thicker, a little wider. So just try to keep that consistent as well. You can kind of see it here and here. So this one's interesting, not bad. So one thing, and I don't know how much of the walk we can see here, but the chicken's head kind of has a forward back movement, which you kind of have an up down here as opposed to a forward back, right? And the chicken's foot usually comes forward for each of its steps. But I like the thought process. I like where you're going with it. I think it just needs maybe a little bit more kind of closer, more detailed attention to the reference material. All right, and just timing and kind of lack of in-betweens again. So I'm not going to necessarily go through all these guys. A lot of the same issues. As we come to our final assignment, we have to make sure that we're getting closer to cleaned up stuff. So this is actually kind of more in line with kind of where we're going to want to go. So this is not too bad. The main thing is not a lot of up down either on this character. So those legs are automatically kind of shrinking and stretching.
Dedicated to working on your speed, increasing the frequency of your steps. Increase the pace of your steps, making sure to roll through your feet and push off with your toes.
So it's hard to tell, but there is a little bit of an up down.
So make sure to warm up beforehand by walking for a few
but those are things we need to exaggerate in animation to get it to read properly. Okay. All right, guys. So hopefully you have the idea that I think this works pretty well. The feet are working well. I think the rest of the body could maybe have a little bit more of an overlapping action. Maybe something could be happening with the hands too. But I mean, it kind of works. I think just by virtue of you having the up down there and the legs working properly, it works fairly well. Oh, someone got ambitious. They did a four-legged walk. That's quite ambitious. Careful reference is required to kind of really get this going. I would actually do a bipedal walk cycle before a quadruped. It's just it's a bit of an extra thing. There's a book by Edward Muybridge. And these books are like famous in animation because he basically kind of tracked what movement looks like. I actually have his two books. He has one for people and one for animals. Super awesome reference. I'll share a link. So if you're really serious about animation, especially animation for games, these books are indispensable. I believe I have them at the university in my office. Otherwise, I would show it to you guys. But definitely a handy resource alongside something like the Animator's Survival Kit. But if you wanted to see like walking, jumping, lunging, 2-foot jumps, 1-foot jumps, things like that, fencing, right? It's all in here. Any kind of animal, running, jumping, leaping, it's all in these books, and really carefully plotted out so you see how much the body comes off the ground, how far it compresses when it lands to catch the weight, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing is just reference, guys. Get good reference, get better reference to make sure that you know what you're working towards. Okay, so even this, like, even though it's not your own self-shot reference, this is all good stuff also.
Round 7. I can't even I can't fathom how fucking amazing this.
No. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, doesn't have to be funny, but that is kind of funny. But I think, Ethan, you're on the right track here. It's just a matter of maybe more up down as well for you. Okay, and maybe make sure the character's on balance. So right now, his weight is maybe a little bit too far back, okay, relative to where his feet are. So maybe get that back leg a little bit more tucked out here, okay, so that we can get a sense that he's not going to fall over backwards. So you can definitely see here his weight would probably make him fall backwards. So just be mindful of that. Okay, again, in place and not enough drawings here, okay? Not too bad. I like where you're going with it, but a little bit, you might be duplicating the first frame as well. And again, the thumbnail's step one, right? Step one, you do need to kind of dial its opacity back and use this as a foundation for what's going to serve as your actual rough. Okay, not bad. We're losing the arms a little bit, and maybe a few too few frames. Okay. All right, guys. So that's basically it. If anyone else wants me to look at theirs, let me know now. Otherwise, I'd like to move on. But character movement, character animation is so important that we do need to make sure that we are doing it properly. And it starts with good reference, and it starts with good thumbnails, okay, that are analyzing that reference. Okay, and then just using the animation, the thumbnails as a basis. Don't commit to them, right? They're not going to necessarily work in the long run, especially with something as technical as a walk cycle. Okay, there are like bigger movements, bigger actions where you could maybe get away with it more, like a jump or a roll or something like that. But for a walk cycle where, you know, the placement of the arm relative to the frame before is like so critical, you can't afford to be making like kind of big wild jumps. Okay, it's got to kind of really slow in, slow out appropriately, which requires a good amount of kind of careful placement. All right, so next, let's look at our next animation, or our next assignment. So character animation, for this assignment you will be producing a series of finalized character animations using the same character. It's up to you how do you guys will approach this. You can make your own character. You can use a character that you had last semester. You can use a brand new character from this semester if you want. If you want to kind of like use these characters, these animations, and use this as a way to generate animations for your final game, I am also cool with that. Okay, so you could use a character from your project. So for example, one of you could maybe make a character for animations for an enemy or a boss or the main character or whatever, right? So it's up to you guys how you approach this. It's totally free how you do this, but whatever you do for this, I will allow you to also submit aspects of it for your final GDW assignment. Okay, so the final GDW assignment will be 5 total character animations which can be split amongst different characters, 3 animated environment pieces or props, a UI, and a title card. Okay, so components of that GDW submission can come from this assignment. So it's up to you which characters you choose to animate and which animations you choose to make. But consult with your GDW groups. All right. So for this assignment, you'll be producing a series of finalized character animations using the same character. You'll be creating 3 animations total, consisting of 1 idle animation, 1 locomotion animation, such as a walk, roll, or run, and 1 unique animation, such as an attack, jump, or crouch. Crouch, victory, death animation, etc. The animations must be fully polished. So a few of you have done this to this point, so you'll know what's required, but a lot of you have just done the roughs. So we will have to fully finalize these animations, fully polished, complete, and ready to put into a game project. Make sure you use reference videos, okay? So ideally you will create your own, but you can use video references from YouTube, TV, sports, or movies if you need to. It's important to get in the habit of creating your own references for animations, okay? And again, this is video references. I cannot overstate that enough. So each completed animation should be properly planned. Okay, so you do still have to go through all your planning, get your reference videos, any other references that you need, do your thumbnails, do your planning layers. Each animation should be able to hook up with the idle animation, so that's kind of like the animation that you use to blend in and out of. Okay, so it doesn't have to be you don't have to necessarily do all the transitions, but it should work with the idle animation. If your character is in their idle state and then you go to run, it shouldn't look too jarring, okay? Or if they go to walk, it shouldn't look too kind of jarring to see that happen. Bonus points if you make a separate idle transition, okay? So you transition out of your idle into your run or your walk. It is not necessary, but it is sometimes nice to have. So they should be worked out in rough form and then iterated on, okay, where necessary. So don't kind of live and die with the very first version of your animation that you kind of generate. Rework it, kind of redraw it on a new layer, and kind of gradually refine it, get it to the point where it's moving and reading properly, okay? It should be fully in between, okay? So that means the movements are fluid and smooth. No more 4 drawings for a walk cycle. It should be like 16 to 32 drawings for a walk cycle, maybe 16 or maybe 10 to 16 drawings for a fluid run cycle. Okay, so I just want to see nice, fluid, alive characters. Okay, they're moving, they're living, they're breathing. Okay, you're not going to get that from like a very limited approach where you only have like 4 to 8 drawings, for something that requires 16 to 32 drawings. It should be okay, so it should be finalized in terms of line and color as well. Okay, so I will expect to see this final presentation ready. You have your final lines, you have your finalized colors, and it's basically all ready to go. We'll need to get started on this right away because we do have 3 full animations to create. It's going to take time. You cannot leave this till last minute and expect to do a good job. It will not go well for you. So 3 animations total. Okay, so an idle animation, right? A walk or a run, and then any other unique animation can be a jump, attack, taunt, etc. Whatever is suitable for your purposes, for your needs. Yeah, if you have a running animation, you can do a stop skid animation. Yeah, I would accept that for sure. A skid transition from a skid into an idle. Yes, yeah, you can do that. Okay, so for the assessment, 5 points for the planning. Okay, so all your reference work, your thumbnails, all the keys and breakdowns that you've sorted out, arcs, timing, and equivalent, all those planning layers that you might generate. Okay, so I want to see all of that for each of the animations. And then animation, so make sure that the principles are working well, the overall sequence is readable, we can tell properly what's happening. And then finally the quality. So how well have you in between this? Is it fluid and lifelike? Is everything on model, meaning it still always looks like the same character, and animation 1 looks like the same character as the second animation, looks like the same character as the third animation, and then is it nicely colored and polished? Okay, so this could be pixel art if you want. I don't really care, but I will expect that if this is like done for a presentation or ready to be inserted into a project. It can be your GDW game, but it does not have to be your GDW game. You can do something totally different. Okay, so for our submission, embed or link all the planning, images and videos, character design, so which character you're working off. You can it doesn't have to be something you created yourself. Another member in your group could have made this, or it could be something you made last semester. I just want to see which character this is based on. It does have to be your own creation. I don't want you guys to animate an existing character. If you don't have a character that you can work with, maybe reach out to me, just get my approval first before you kind of go animating like Daffy Duck or Bugs Bunny. But I'd prefer that you work with your own character designs, or one of your group members. I want to see all your thumbnails. Okay, so you're gonna have to do your thumbnails for each of your animations, and you'll be glad, hopefully, that you've done all this, because it will go fairly quickly to generate the thumbnails, but you will have to iterate on it. Okay, so rough animation iteration. So I will expect to also see that yes, you have your thumbnails, but you've iterated on that and generated new rough animations based on maybe what those thumbnails were, or maybe the thumbnails were inspiration for something that you kind of tweaked or adjusted slightly. And then finally, embed or link your final animation videos. This should show the finished, in between, and cleaned up animations. Okay, so your final version of your animation sequences. All right, so this is gonna be due March 12th, guys. So we have 4 weeks approximately for this, which is quite a lot of time, but you will have to manage your time effectively. You will want to get started sooner than later, and we will have weekly activities that speak to it to some degree. You could potentially use these previous weekly activities towards this. I will be honest, a lot of the walk cycles...
You mean April 12th.
What did I say, March 12th? What did I say? Yeah, April 12th. I might have said March 12th. I apologize if I did.
You said March.
Oh, okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah, no, April 12th. Yeah. So definitely April 12th. Otherwise, everyone's late. So basically, I lost my train of thought. I was going to say, yes. So the walk cycles, in truth, a lot of them aren't at the state that they'll need to be at for a submission for this assignment. You need to revisit and tweak, maybe based on the feedback that I've given you today, or start from scratch. Okay, and just try to kind of make sure that you're stepping through each of those stages appropriately, with the key step being getting good appropriate references to start with. Get a good strong video. Take your own video. It's getting nice outside. Go outside, walk around, and get a video clip of yourself kind of walking, running, jumping, whatever that looks like. Okay, or maybe your family member will do it for you. Okay, so that, or find something on YouTube. There's so much out there, right? The only problem again with YouTube is we don't get exactly what we want. We just get something that someone else already has made. So we're not. It's not quite as nice as us generating it ourselves. All right, guys. So that's us wrapping our semester. I'll also be posting our formal GDW assessment or assignment. I think you guys have the gist of it. It's on the syllabus. But also I'll post the modified version for non-GDW people, so you guys will know what to do as well. But that is effectively it. I think we might want to take a short break. I've just kind of been blabbing on here for a long time. So let's take a short break, guys, and then we'll come back and we'll start making a jump animation. What you guys might want to do during the break, maybe take a video of yourselves jumping. Okay, so just kind of go and generate that, so you have that to work off of. You can use it for thumbnails. I'll accept like a jump animation if you want to do something else. So if you want to maybe start speaking to this, the unique animation at this stage, you can think of like maybe a jump or an attack or a taunt or whatever. Okay, you will need to kind of generate one of those. Okay, I'm going to probably just do a jump, but this could be whatever that unique animation, whatever you want it to be. Okay, so again, attack, jump, crouch, victory, death animation, etc. It's up to you guys. All right, so find reference or create your own reference. We'll start back up in, let's say, 10 minutes, so 6:40, and then kind of go from there. Okay. Now I don't know if I should leave the YouTube stream running or if Mohit, it's really up to you. You can easily have a pixel animation that is 32 frames. Yeah, it would be look totally appropriate. You can also have a pixel animation that is far fewer frames. It's really going to be kind of what works the best in your project, or what resonates the most strongly with whatever it is you're trying to do. Okay. All right, guys. So I'll take a break now. So we'll come back at 6:40. So this YouTube stream is not dead. It will be coming back. All right. Let's go to break mode. And Mohit, yeah, I can do that. So what I'll do is Alright guys, so we're gonna get started again. And actually I went to go shoot some reference and it's on my phone. So I'll be using this. I tried uploading it to my computer, but I don't know if that'll work, but I can try to show it to you guys here. As embarrassing as it is. Just bear with me. So you guys can't hear me. How about now? Any better? Okay. Might be on your end, Joshua. All right, so so what I'm going to do is I'll show you guys the reference that I took. Hopefully you took some reference video of your own as well. Because ultimately, this is the kind of stuff that we'll need to move forward with. So you guys will see me jumping around like a silly person here. Hold on a sec. Okay. Some glare. So that's basically what I took. Just myself jumping. And I got into it after a while. So I got some exaggerated overlapping action. Maybe pretending like I was fighting or something like that. So have fun with it, guys. Like, don't feel self-conscious, you know. As silly as it might seem, you want to make an interesting animation, so sometimes you have to act a little bit silly, or give yourself like good source material to work from, right? So that's kind of the thing that that you want to do. So again, I say it's embarrassing. It is, but I, you know, with some of these things, you gotta reveal yourself. You gotta open up and kind of see, like, what am I doing there? I don't even know. See, I was trying out different things, right? Trying out different jumps, and I ultimately want to choose one of these, right? But in the end, again, you don't have to ever show this to me, but it is good to have, for your own purposes, you know, something to work off of, to thumbnail out and kind of work from, right? So that's ultimately where you want to work from. Okay, so that's basically what I did. So you'll want to do the same. Have fun with this. Get into your character. Like, you have like some character in mind already. So think about who that character is. And then do your best to get into your character's skin. Act like your character, for the sake of your sequence. Okay, and that way you have something nice to work off of. All right, so let's just do a jump here. I'll do all my thumbnails this time digitally. Okay, and the nice thing about a jump or any kind of one-off or unique animation is now we can like have more fun. We can do a little bit more with it. We're not as constrained by, you know, the technical stuff like making sure the feet move at a certain rate, and you know, this arm has to hook up to this arm, and all those kinds of things like that we need in a proper walking cycle. Walk cycles are probably one of the more challenging technical things that we're gonna ever kind of like tackle, but like a jump or an attack is going to be a lot more manageable. I'm gonna see if I can't share this. I'll just, sorry, you guys forgive me. I'll just draw it on my own end. You guys did see the videos that I shared there, but that's basically what I'm working off of. And I'm just gonna choose one of the jumps that I did. Probably one of those jumps at the end, maybe where I just jump from facing one way to the other way, just because it's kind of simple. And it kind of works. So what I had is, again, just thumbnails, and I'll do this all in one page to start. Okay, so perspective wise, 1 foot is closer, 1 foot is further. It's based on my reference here. And I can't stress how much like this kind of like helps, because it takes almost all the guesswork out of like what I'm trying to do. Like I just know what kind of pose I want to have. Or I don't have to think as much about it. It's just there, right? And I'm just kind of copying what's there. But I'm looking for things like, what's the relationship between the hands? What's the tilt of the shoulders? What is the head lining up with, right? What's the angle between the feet? You know, what's the angle between the knees? Things like that. What's the tilt of the hips? Right? And so those are the kinds of basic things I'm looking for. That's one of the reasons why, like in an animation program, they're going to have you do extensive like life drawing, just so you can kind of understand and learn to analyze what's going on in a pose. Every time my phone turns off here, it kind of like goes back to the same spot. Kind of like that Spider-Man jump I did, but for our purposes, we'll keep it simple. So I'm just trying to nail down my keys and breakdowns initially. So I want to make sure things like anticipations I get in here. So as my character jumps down, I actually see my anticipation. I want to exaggerate it, but I'm kind of like this. So this is where you pick up like all these subtleties that you wouldn't have thought of initially. Like, what do you actually do? And you can edit it. Like if you say, oh, that's what I actually did, but that's not what I want my character to do. You can go back and reshoot your reference to do something that you think your character would look cooler doing. But I did something like this. Put one arm forward. And I kind of looked kind of down. I can't see what I was doing with my other arm because it's out of frame. But I imagine it was something maybe like this. Okay, so kind of bend down, and this leg should be further forward. And then I get airborne. Probably want to exaggerate, so I might want to kind of still tweak. But then I jumped up in the air. Again, looking for things like relationship between knees, relationship between feet. Okay, what's that relationship between the toes, the ankles? What is the tilt, the angle here of the torso, or the overall line of action of the pose? Okay, what are those arms doing? Right, so now I'm kind of like jumping around. Then I land. Now I'm tilted the other way. Use the center line to kind of convey that. This shoulder is up high. Okay, my elbow is actually lifted as well. I have one leg going back, like so, and one leg kind of coming forwards. Oops. Something like this. And then I kind of just settle in that pose. I also did something interesting. I from here I went into my twisting jump. But again, for the purposes of a game, maybe we'd have our character jump one way and then jump back. So I have that as well. So I'm just going to track what happens there. So I jump, I land here, and then I jumped immediately back. This could almost be like an idle as well, but maybe in a fighting game or something, or changing stances. But here, kind of jumped off this leg. This one was behind, this knees came forward. Again, similar to what I had here. But I'm picking up on all the subtleties contained within my reference, okay? And I always say this, like I hardly ever use reference, sadly. Like, I shouldn't say hardly ever, but I don't use it nearly as much as I ought to. And whenever I do, I always benefit from it, right? So it's something that's so valuable, but it's easy to kind of feel like, oh, I don't need it, or to kind of just want to move forward without it. But it actually makes everything go way smoother, and generally speaking, helps you produce better results. So your first step, guys, for this is I would just shoot all your references for each of your sequences, each of your animations, just so you have it. You can show it to your group members as well and say, what if our character walks like this, or what if our character runs like this, or what if the jump is like this? And maybe you don't even necessarily have to use your own reference. You could use a reference that your group member made, right? If they're really good at kind of acting and kind of they don't feel weird getting into character and jumping around and doing all that stuff, then maybe they do it, they generate that for you, and then you work from that, or you all do it and then maybe compare notes and say, yeah, I like these ones the best. Oops. Okay, so here when I landed back, I had a bit wider of a stance and my feet were a little bit more even in terms of where they were planted. Maybe a little bit more weight on that front leg. But again, relationship between things like knees, things like ankles, things like toes. Incidentally, if you do want to go do life drawing or cafe drawing, or just go to, like, can't really do it now, but like, or life, you can't do any of that now, unfortunately, but when we're eventually back on canvas, one of the things we did, or were taught to do in art school, was do something called cafe drawing, where basically we would go to a cafe and just draw people, just kind of watch people and draw them. It's kind of weird, but it's really helpful. And same thing on the subway, we just draw people on the subway. All right. Okay, so I'm thinking I'm coming to my last drawing here. Yeah, so this is basically my last drawing. I probably kind of have a final settle. Right? Or I want this to hook back into this first drawing, so that this can loop endlessly. So I could probably just take this and put that there. So yeah, at this point I want to just test this and see, does this work, yes or no? Which parts can I keep? Which parts do I need to get rid of? I do, right off the bat, by virtue of drawing it all in the same place, and again, another reason I recommend it, I do notice some scale issues, so let's fix those. Oops. Let's get this going a little bit bigger. Make sure it's kind of like matching scale wise with what I have there. Same things for these guys. I think these ones are a little too small. And I think I might need another drawing or two here on the reversed verse pose, but I could probably just hold that for a beat and just see whether or not that works properly. Okay, so I'll do the same thing I've done in the past. Take this file, new. Let's go with that size. So start with this. Just turn on my onion skin. Go with that. Might have to tweak the scaling on this. It seems a little small. Okay, and that should ideally hook up with the first drawing. Let's see. Pretty close. So I'll just quickly. That's way too fast. So it kind of works. Some of these frames I need to hold, so I'll need to hold this. I'll need to hold, say, maybe this last frame a little longer. Some of the positioning is off, but I can fix that. So let's just clean this up. So just like we did before, same as we did last time with the walk, we're doing basically the same thing now. The only difference is this time I made sure that whatever I did was informed by reference. Okay. So if there's like an outlier, it's probably this one. Just in terms of the position, I feel like it needs to be a little lower, maybe smaller. Yeah. So it needs some exaggeration probably, but you know, and some more overlapping action and things like that. Can you repeat how you move your entire image around like that and paste it onto new frames? Yeah. Sorry, it's just it is a TV Paint thing. It is a TV Paint thing. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I just love this program so much. You can for you guys, you'll have to do it like you'll basically have to go in and, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you'll copy, you'll make a marquee selection, press Control C, and then Control V. And then move that particular drawing to where you need to move it, and then kind of go approach it like that. Yeah, so it's not quite as fast, but does the trick. All right, so here we have a lot, but we need a little bit more, and this is really just a rough, right? So we do want to kind of use this as a starting point. And that's it. So I think this is the step that, from what I saw, it appeared like a lot of you guys did not do this next step where once we captured our thumbnails and confirmed that it is a good starting point, you didn't necessarily kind of take it to the next stage. So here I want to have some planning layers. So let's have like just a ground. Okay, for our character to stand on, we'll make this a held frame. Okay, and then above that we can kind of just map out the logistics of our character here. Okay, nothing crazy here, just can be stick figure, could be really loose gestures, so long as I have an understanding of what's happening, you know, on the inside of the form and where the movement's starting from, and I have the ability to stay on model. It doesn't really matter that much how we choose to short form this out. But we will have to do so. Okay, and I like to step forward and back from one frame to the next, just to make sure that things are working properly. And I can notice that in my rough thumbnail, the body kind of changes like that. So I want to make sure that I can take this shoulder and I'll just have my pencil kind of go back and forth like this. I'll go to the next frame and I'll just kind of map that out. So I have that arc kind of going. So I can imagine the shoulders tilting down. And I can even build in like drag or overlapping action here. Maybe have the head kind of a beat slower, right? And use cross contour lines to indicate the tilt of things. Use silhouette as well to kind of convey what's happening here. So the butt is kind of going out as the shoulders kind of come down. And I have the arms are going to kind of go up a little bit, maybe not as much as this, but again I'll keep a reference to where they were. Just stepping without onion skinning, just stepping forward and back. And the underdrawing that I see here is just my reference, my thumbnails. So I just use that as a kind of a simple guide. And I'll have the elbows start swinging out because the arms are going to come out like this, right? So I'm starting to think about how are these arms going to get from point A to point C, right? So what's that B position looking like? Okay, and the hips are going to jump up like that. Okay, but the foot needs to kind of stay planted. Again, that foot needs to stay in the same spot. Can shift slightly. And maybe it doesn't make sense for the knee to bend out that way if the knee is ultimately going to turn in. So if the knee is going to end up something like this, probably want to start having the knee go from here to here, right? So if this is the ending spot and this is the starting spot, I can kind of map out, just using my cursor, where's that in between position? Maybe something like this. Okay, and let's keep tracking this shoulder. So the shoulders here, I'm going to have them come out more like this. Okay, so I'm just using that drawing again primarily as just a kind of a reference more than anything. I'm not married to what's there, right? Okay, can get away with like some squash and stretch and things like that. Some slight distortion, so I can kind of take some liberties here with the foot, assuming I'm not gonna need to hold it for all that long. If it's just momentarily, we could potentially get away with some weird distortions. And I think here to here might not work that great, so I might need to fix this. I think this leg might need some work. Maybe I just have to pull this back, the knee back, because you can assume if the thigh is coming back, right, from here to here, if the thigh is here now, it's going to pull, right? So it's going to, can't leave the knee in the same spot. The knee has to jump backwards, right? Because the origin moved backwards. So that's the kind of thing that we're plotting and working through as we are kind of planning this sequence out. So this is really just my anticipation, right? So this is my anticipation for the jump. And I think this leg is a little problematic, so I need to adjust it. There we go. I think that's better. But I feel like I need probably a bit more of a anticipation here as I kind of go into that next thing, but I can always add that in after. But let's, because if these are just our keys, we can kind of work that out after the fact. So here we have, here we go into our jump. And the jump comes from this leg, so truthfully we probably would want to add even just that one extra in between. So I'm just gonna play with my timing here. I'm just gonna hold that for another frame just so I can come in here and just add one other drawing where I'm gonna compress the body here from what I have here, right? So we can kind of get that that jump going. And see how I don't rely on the onion skins. I just, again, I know I've said this before, but you want to flip to see that the animation is reading properly. And that'll kind of really quickly highlight for you which parts are problematic. And I think this first frame is problematic. So this knee on the first drawing is needs some work. So here I might just turn on my onion skin just to see what is happening here versus the next drawing. And for here I might just trace it over. And I think I might also just kind of erase any reference here that I have to the knees, because I think that is distracting also from what I'm trying to say. And I may find that I need to get rid of a drawing altogether. So rough at this stage. I don't need anything to be clean because this is, again, an intermediate drawing. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. It's this drawing, this to this is what I want. I think this maybe doesn't need to be there, so I can probably even get rid of it. So I can go from here straight into that, and I think that works better. Yeah. So if a drawing, in this case, that original kind of anticipation drawing that I had, if I find that it's interfering with, you know, the overall kind of motion that I'm going for, best to just remove it. And here, I'll just have the head more kind of compressed as well. All right, and then we go from here into our jump. Okay, I probably want to hold this for a beat. Want to do something in the air. Before landing. Okay, and then we land. I'll just pretty much stick with what I have here. Okay, so we definitely need something in between. So here I'll turn on my onion skin just so I have a sense of what these two things are. And I'll just try to map out a in between here that makes sense. So this is the right shoulder, right shoulder. I'll probably have something like this. Again, overlapping action, maybe I can suggest that here with the head dragging behind a little bit so the head doesn't kind of, or maybe the torso is even more stretched out than I have here. I'm not really feeling that. So I think we need to just we think where the hips are first, where the hips would be. Maybe go a little higher. Can have the legs swing out more. And turn off my onion skin just so that I can kind of get a sense of how the movement's working. Not feeling what's happening with this leg. So tracking the movement of this leg, da, da, da. Maybe something like that. Yeah. I think something like that feels okay. So I'm auditioning this line, right? Just to see, does that line give me the movement that I'm looking for? I'm drawing for the movement first and foremost. And this back leg needs to be maybe a little bit more up in the air. I feel like I even need maybe just one more drawing as well, but we'll start with this one. So we'll have this be like the most extreme up drawing. This doesn't really exist in my reference, but I think works better for the animation. So I will need another drawing in between here and here. So I'm going to have the C curve like this. And then when I do an in-between, I'm going to have it drag. It's going to reverse on itself. So I'll have like an S as the upper body and head drag. And then when it gets to this pose, they'll slam back down into this position. I probably want to have another squash position after this just to show the weight of the character landing. And at this point, it's important for me to state, I am not concerned with like pretty drawings whatsoever. I'm really just trying to get the movement right. Okay. All right, so now let's just do another drawing between these two. Way character drops. See how I can kind of go from this, I look at this, and I look at that. Seems like a really good dynamic transition, right? But I think it could be even stronger if I put this bend here at the position of the heel. So if I really get a strong read on that silhouette change. So here to here to here, that doesn't quite work. Here to here works. This to this works really nicely. But this to that doesn't work because there's a weird slide at the end, right? We're kind of like changing trajectory. We're kind of going strong diagonal and then like a little horizontal, and it just doesn't quite work. So to fix it, all I have to do is probably just change the position of this to something like that. And I think that works a lot better. To make it work even better, I think I might have to make this angle slightly more acute. Turn on my onion skin in here. What I'll do, I'll just raise this up so it's not quite on the ground yet. So I have a little bit more leeway in terms of what I do with the knees. Hips can be hanging more in the air. And it's always nice actually if one foot lands first. So let's get the back leg to land first to offset it so things aren't happening all at the same time. We can kind of maybe try something interesting like that. Okay, so we have this foot kind of come in contact with the ground first. Okay, and like I said, we want to get that reverse kind of C going on the body, so there's a drag. So it might look funny in the drawing, but hopefully it'll work out when it's in motion. So we kind of get that drag, so you see kind of like that. But we could probably do this better. Let's get this. So for overlapping action, we want the arm to drag behind slightly. We can even have the arm start straightening out. We could probably smooth some of this stuff out too, so it's not quite so bendy. There we go. So I'm going like C, reverse C, reverse C again, or C to S to reverse C in terms of the silhouette. It may or may not be perfect, but I think with good timing I can probably tie this down and get it to read effectively. And my goal is to have it so that I can kind of jump back and forth nicely. And once I have like a basic general placement of things, I can easily go back in and continue to refine and tweak and finesse everything out. Okay, thanks. So there's a comment. A lot of the time you say this looks a little wrong. I don't see the mistake until you have already fixed it. Is that a sense that comes with time, or is there a way to build it aside from simply just doing more and more animations? So thanks. That's a good question. Let me just pause here for a second. Let's open a new document. So it comes from like, it might be as a sense, but I think sometimes it's something you learn to see. So if I have, say I have a line like this, I don't want to move over to a line like this. All right. First, I want to anticipate, so I'm going to want to anticipate. So here's what I mean. I'm going to do an anticipation drawing, something like that. I just want to see these two drawings. Do they look like they work well together? Yes or no? They do not. Why not? It doesn't look like it works well together because it doesn't look like this line is changing into this line. It looks like I just have like added something to the top of it. So as opposed to what I wanted it to look like this line is at this point it's bending, right? It may be leaning forward a little bit while it's bending. So I wanted something like that, right? But instead I got something that just looked like I just tacked on a bit of a drawing at the top. So for that reason, to me, it looked wrong. It didn't look correct. So I need to tweak it. And I like to do this without using my onion skin. So now it looks like the same line. It looks like one line that is bending, but I think it could be stronger because I think this S curve weakens the overall sense that I want. I think it'd be even stronger if I had a strong, more simplified bend. So it's like really one single strong statement, and I'm using the silhouette to convey that, right? So I'm gonna try this now. That works better, right? So now it's like there's a relationship between these two drawings. It seems like this guy is now bending backwards, as opposed to what I had before, where it was more like this, and then I just had like another piece tacked on, right? So it feels like a stronger relationship, but I feel a force here, where I feel like this has now been pushed like that. Right, so I can see the movement, I can see it, and I think that's ultimately what I'm responding to. So if I have a foot, like in here, so I'm looking at this silhouette here, right? See that? And what is the relationship between that silhouette, whoops, this line, this bend, this silhouette, and what I had previously, which was this? And I feel like I can see the force of the movement. I know the foot is going to has to go down here. I want to make sure that that is carried through the position of my drawings until it reaches its destination. And I think to make this even stronger, I'd probably want to do like a nice squash or something, you know, to really kind of sell that, and then have it go back to its normal position in the subsequent frame. And some of this stuff you don't want to hold it too long, right? But you do want to have it in there. So it's a lot of, it is a feeling. It is like trying to like capture that movement. It's really like a lot of it, I guess, is about the arcs, right? So making sure that you're following either an arc of movement or a S curve of movement or a straight line, right? So sometimes if you want something to move strongly, you move in a very straight line, right? So it's really more so that than anything. I'm trying to kind of pick out certain spots in the drawing and making sure that they look like they have that movement to them. So to continue with this, probably do a slight slow in. Okay, so see where the bend is, see where the starting point is, kind of connect those dots. And see where this is. This is probably going to bend down something like this. I can easily in between this. Now I can turn this on and do my in-betweens. So he gets into his anticipation, and then the character has to move across somehow to here. So these bent backwards, it's going to fling forwards. So the movement I want to kind of come from here. So this has, imagine this is like someone's pulling this down, and it's going to spring back and kind of go to that position. So now I want to figure out what does that look like. What is that next in-between drawing that works? So again, I want to do this as much as possible without in between, so that looks like it could do the trick, right? It's too long. But I have this. Okay, then we'll have our landing, which will be something like that. Or something like that. So it's this part now is kind of carrying some of that weight, right? The bend is happening here. But we still have the momentum on the top part, and then we'll come back to that initial position. But we'll have to figure out what all this looks like. So that's I don't know if that helps or not, but that's kind of the thinking. And I can generally kind of tell at this point, you know, whether or not it looks like it is it's reading properly. And it looks like the movement is properly motivated. And I'll probably want to hold this last. So something like that, like the balance maybe is a little off, and we probably want to settle into a kind of a more regular position at the end. But that's generally the thought process with something like this. And I find that for whatever reason, it's easier for me to kind of read that when I flip back and forth between drawings with no onion skins. Right? Than when I rely solely on the onion skins. And a lot of this is going to be timing too. So if we kind of get to this, these last few positions, we're going to want to slowly come out of that pose into our more regular pose. And this is a good start. This just gives me the timing, but to smoothen out, I need to kind of go back in and do the in-betweens. But once I kind of get to close to the end game and I kind of have most of the important drawings in place, I can generally afford at that point to just turn on my onion skin. This is the point where I'd use my onion skin and just in between things. Okay, and that way I'll end up with a really nice, fluid, smooth looking animation. Again, still rough, right? Still rough, but the hardest part to get right is the movement. Once the movement is right, it is going to not be trivial to get the rest of it, right? But once you have the movement right, it is you have a good solid base to continue to build from. Okay. All right. So that's what I refer to when I say that I am it doesn't look right. Usually I'm looking at the silhouette. does the anticipation read properly with the next drawing? Yes or no? Okay, so here we are. Okay, then we move into this drawing. And we'd want to also have probably a drawing here where now this side is a little more compressed, where and we can come into something like this. Oh, see that in particular, that reads really nicely. This to this to that. So this. See how we feel that springiness to it? We see the squash and then the stretch. Like we really kind of get a good strong kind of feel for that. Does that make sense? More so than even anything I have here. This feels like things aren't moving correctly in the right arcs per se. I would want to probably tighten this up, clean things up. But this landing, actually this, that all look good. And that's what I'm looking for. I don't rely on my in-betweens. I don't rely on this to say, yeah, this is going to work. Because I won't know. I won't know until I actually look at it. Okay. So that's half the battle. The next half is just timing, making sure the timing is right. You hold, things long enough to register when they need to be held in order to register. Like if something like this, maybe you hold this for a couple of beats, right? Instead of just the one before taking off and getting in midair, right? So just small things like that. And it's a very fluid thing. It's not something you can 100% pre-plan and just have it work unless you get like a lot of experience, and then you just generally get a feel and a sense for the timing. Like if I make things this far apart, it'll read this fast or this slow. And if I gradually increase the spacing, it'll gradually look like it's getting faster. If I gradually decrease the spacing, it'll gradually look like it's getting slower. So you'll ultimately, the more animation you do, get a feel for how to manipulate that sense of time and space, which is kind of the key thing. All right. Okay, so let's keep going here. And so our weekly activity, guys, this week is going to be a jump or something equivalent. If you want to do something equivalent, that's going to be up to you. I want to see the reference, and then I want to see the actual kind of animation that you produce as a result. So reference, thumbnails, animation. I'd like the animation to be in between as well. Okay, so I'll put that up for the discussion for this week. And think ahead. Think of how you can use this, reuse, or use this as a building block for your final assignment for this class. Okay, so this is something you can definitely use as a foundation for whatever your jump animation or your attack animation is going to ultimately become. Okay, and that's how I want you to think of it. Okay, and use previous and subsequent frames as references for where to draw. So again, when I want to draw the foot on this frame, instead of turning on my onion skin and relying on my onion skin, I will step forward to the frame that I need to reference in this case. And I'm able to basically reference the first frame here in TV Paint because I'm using the loop kind of feature at the end. But in your case, you want to take that first frame, either drag your cursor here, leave your stylus there or something like that, or leave your finger there, and then kind of come back to that last frame and then map out where the detail should be. Okay, so that's a way to kind of map that thing out. If this is strategically, I think that's again, I said it before, but it's one of the huge advantages that we get from digital animation that we didn't have in traditional with paper, right? So you have this ability to kind of step through drawings and kind of keep your cursor in the same place, which is really, really handy. So I definitely see like a weird occurrence where the hips go in and out and in and out, and it's a bit problematic. So I probably need to drop this last drawing and leave it at, well, and it's still doing that. Why is that happening? Let's turn these guys off. Oh, so it's just the it looked like it was a frame below that was throwing me off, so I could probably try bringing this back. Let's just turn these off. Yeah, and that works. I think I just need to hold that slightly longer. But maybe not quite that long. Okay, so here I'm adjusting the timing. And there might be a couple of drawings I want to get rid of. Some of these drawings don't really contribute well to the overall. Yeah, so I think that works better. Okay, so that's it, and that's an endless loop that I could just run. That could be an idle animation. So your idle animation, Ricardo, that's up to you. I would say probably you want like 5 to 10 frames for your idle. Doesn't have to be anything elaborate. Don't have to do like an Easter egg kind of massive, 3-minute idle animation where the character sits down and takes out their lunch, and has a picnic and all that kind of stuff. It could just be like a simple kind of shifting weight back and forth, right? With a breathing, looking around potentially. Just something to make your character look like they're alive. Okay, something that the player wouldn't think is weird to see. You don't want something super conspicuous like waving to the camera like over and over again, because you want to have this idle animation kind of be the kind of the glue of your game, right? So anything that's like too outliery will become problematic. All right, So that's basically it, guys. Stuff we've done before. The emphasis here in like a jump or an attack is really leaning into the reference and making sure that we have good, strong anticipation. Anticipation is huge with this. Oh, you can't see me. So hopefully that helps, guys. I appreciate your patience. I know you have a million things that you're juggling and other things going on, but do your best to do this justice. Try to have fun with it. Have fun with the reference. Have fun with the thumbnails. And then I think the rest of the process will come like more naturally. You'll get more inspired, more motivated, and have fun with the rest. Remember, when looking at your thumbnails or looking at your reference and mapping out your thumbnails, look for things like the orientation of shoulders. What's the tilt of the head? What's the tilt of the hips, right? Maybe the hips, like in this case, are even. What's the tilt on the knees? You know, is one higher than the other? What's the tilt on the feet, right? And that tells us perspective, which foot is closer to us than the other foot. All those kinds of things are key as we start working this out, because doing these animations is going to be a little bit different than just doing a regular walk cycle. All right. Okay, guys, so that's basically it. Hopefully that's helpful, and I will see you guys next time. Keep an eye out for the discussion, which I will post shortly, and I look forward to seeing what you guys do with that. For office hours, I'll post something on Canvas. What I'll do is I'll set up a Mozilla Hub, and I'll just share the link with you guys. And Thursdays during my office hours, I'll just be there. If you want to drop in, you'll be welcome to do so. All right, cool. All right, everybody, take care. You're welcome.